And one thing, you know, if you talked, you mentioned we talked 20 years ago, and I'm going to get to that, but you should have known 20 years ago. You're not going to out-talk me, so let me ask my question. I'll let you talk, then I'll go back to the next point.
Goes both ways, yeah.
All right.
Hey there, guys. Welcome to the channel. So Al Sharpton and Vivek Ramaswamy, they had quite the exchange. Now, I don't know if you guys know who Vivek is. You know, we've done a lot of videos on him here. We're big fans on this channel. He's a GOP candidate that seems to be everywhere these days. Podcasts, he goes on both liberal, conservative media, and everyone's talking about him. And it's obviously not all praise. You know, there's quite a bit of criticism coming his way. Personally, just my own personal belief, I think the guy is probably the most intelligent person to ever run for president. And I'm pretty damn excited to see where this goes. But anyway, so the tension between Sharpton and Ramaswamy is pretty strong. You know, Vivek, he's pointed out and pointed the fingers at individuals like Sharpton a bunch, and for years now, accusing them of basically being harmful race baiters. And he's even compared some of their comments to the divisive rhetoric historically associated with groups like the KKK, which I think is a super bold move, and it's true. But it's a comparison that's not uncommon, really, you know, especially when we've got such a noticeable shift in racial dialogue. You know, there's also a perceived double standard. You know, on one hand, there's been instances where GOP figures like Ron DeSantis, for example, they get likened to figures, you know, from the KKK all the time by outspoken celebrities or The View or whoever. And even Hakeem Jeffries, he once drew a parallel between Trump and the KKK's leadership. Yet it seems like there's a different reaction when the tables are turned. And in this face-off between Sharpton and Vivek, you can sense this friction, man, about these comparisons. And it's a conversation about how the left and the right view each other and whether both sides are guilty of using the same loaded language to make a point. So let's take a look at their exchange and see for ourselves, man. Before we do, guys, thanks to everyone that's been subscribing and leaving great comments. We really appreciate the support. Guys, if you haven't already, please help us with the algorithm. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel.
Welcome back to Politics Nation. According to a brand new Wall Street Journal poll out today that was conducted entirely after the first Republican presidential debate and mostly after the release of Donald Trump's Fulton County mugshot, the former president holds a whopping 46-point lead over Florida Governor Ron DeSantis among GOP primary voters, 59 to 13%. My next guest is also somewhere on that list, but with much less support, with 5%. Joining me now is 2024 presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. First of all, thank you for being here and engaging us in this conversation. I want to start with comments you made repeatedly now, referring to Massachusetts Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley and author Ibram Kendi as, quote, grand wizards of the modern KKK. Now, I understand you differ with both of them politically and probably with me. But as a graduate of Harvard and Yale universities, I believe you must be aware the Ku Klux Klan is not a political party. It's a terrorist organization. Historians view the Klan as the driving force behind lynchings of blacks in the American South, more than 4,000 people murdered from 1877 to 1950. And the group is linked to numerous other acts of racial violence continuing through the civil rights movement to the present day. You're running to be the leader of the free world, so your choice of words matter. Have you taken any time to reflect upon the possibility that comparing your political rivals to murderous terrorists might put their lives in danger at a time when hate crimes are on the rise? Or do you just don't care?
So Reverend Sharpton, I don't look at the world through political parties. Frankly, it's good to see it's been 20 years since we last spoke. And part of the reason that I came to that event 20 years ago with you is that you were a political outsider just like I am in my own party. But let me talk about the issue you're actually asking about, which is that, you know, what's toxic about that old worldview of organizations like the KKK, which have been a god-awful stain on our national history, is that they say that your skin color determines what you're allowed to say, what you're allowed to think. To say you have to shut up, sit down, and do as you're told because you're black or brown-skinned. Well, you know what Ayanna Pressley said much more recently is that we don't want any more black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't want any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. And so, yes, I do think there are echoes of a historical ugly racism in this country now showing up in new clothing.
To say we
and
don't
what I want to lead us to as the next president
just a second.
is a
to say
united
that we
nation
do not want
where we
black
don't actually
voices,
judge each other on the color of our
To
skin.
say that is not going with sheets and burning crosses and lynching people. If she said something you disagree with,
the point I'm making,
you cannot equate Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan with somebody saying something that you think is a little controversial or a little too far. Some of our relatives were terrorized by the Ku Klux Klan. I'm trying to get you to understand
Sharpton, I know
the pain
you're intellectually
of that.
honest. I know you're an intellectually honest guy, and so I will remind you that Hakeem Jeffries drew analogies between Donald Trump and the Ku Klux Klan, and I don't think you had him on pressing him in the same way. So we're drawing analogies here to make a point.
He did not call Donald Trump the grand dragon of the KKK. He did not call Donald Trump an officer of the modern KKK. Let's not change what was said.
So, Reverend Sharpton, though, I'm calling out a double standard and saying that certain people can use certain analogies to make a point. Well, I'm using an analogy to make a point. And the point I'm making is we should stop seeing each other on the basis of our skin color. It was god-awful when the KKK did it. But you know what? We have to learn a lesson in the present that we're creating more racial division in this country.
But you
when you say if you have black skin, you can only think one thing.
You cannot do it being insensitive to our feeling. Like, that's like calling somebody of any kind of group that had a group that were terrorizing.
So I agree with you. We need sensitivity.
So I think we need to be very careful about that. And I wanted to raise that with you directly. Let me go to my next point.
And I respect that you're willing to have an open conversation. That's what we need in this country.
I want to ask you a couple of questions. And one thing, you know, if you talked, you mentioned we talked 20 years ago, and I'm going to get to that, but you should have known 20 years ago. You're not going to out-talk me, so let me ask my question. I'll let you talk, then I'll go back to the next point.
Goes both ways, yeah.
All right.
So Al Sharpton either really can't remember or he's lying. So let me know in the comments which one you think it is. He's either overlooking or denying Hakeem Jeffries' remarks, where Jeffries equated Trump to a grand wizard of the White House, which obviously draws a parallel with KKK leadership. And instead of retracting it, Jeffries, he doubled down, but then he hedged by claiming he didn't think that Trump was actually racist.
Regret going that far in your comments on Monday?
With respect to the comments of a few days ago, we've got to have an opportunity for at least one day a year to have a candid, if sometimes uncomfortable, conversation about race. Seems to me that we can't have that conversation on Valentine's Day. We can't have that conversation on St. Patrick's Day. It's perhaps appropriate for us to be able to have that difficult discussion on MLK Day when we're celebrating the life and legacy of a champion for racial and social justice.
Yes, but you called the president the grand wizard, meaning of the KKK. That's language of the KKK. You think the president of the United States is connected to the KKK? He's a Klansman?
Absolutely not. And as you know, Allison, I did not use the words racist in any of my comments. In fact, Wolf Blitzer in the past has asked me whether I believe the president is a racist, and I've consistently said no. I did use a colorful phrase, but of course I don't believe that the president is a card-carrying member of the KKK, but it did capture a troubling pattern of racially insensitive and outrageous at times behavior in the alt-right.
You make good points. And I think that after Charlottesville, it was you who said that the president was a racial arsonist, meaning, I assume, that he inflames racial tensions. And I think that all of that is demonstrably true, as you've just pointed out. But, you know, the grand wizard, I mean, the reason that I ask you about it is because you call it colorful language, but, you know, isn't that inflaming the situation? Is that helpful, likening someone to the head of the KKK?
Well, I think, as I just pointed out, I do not believe that the president is a card-carrying member of the KKK, but he has presided over and engaged in directly a series of racially insensitive remarks. We cannot whitewash.
But then, of course, there was the Jeffries op-ed where he labeled black conservatives in Congress token blacks and right-wing opportunists. And everybody agrees, you know, that is derogatory. That is terrible stuff to say. But let's be real. You know, the liberal media, they would have lost their freaking minds if Jeffries was a conservative. And Vivek, on the other hand, when pointing out the same kind of rhetoric that's so frequently used by the left against the right, he just, the criticism doesn't stop. So why the double standard? You know, when right-leaning individuals are likened to the KKK or accused of espousing white supremacy, there's no uproar. Yet when the tables are turned, everybody freaking loses it. You know, this is inconsistent and it's glaring and people are starting to see it. And this inconsistency, man, it seems to be at the heart of the matter. You know, the left frequently uses this kind of rhetoric, daily, actually. But when it's directed back at them, they don't know what to do. As seen with Sharpton, you know, they might even deny that it exists. And, you know, here's the concerning thing, you know, based on recent polls after the debate, is that the narrative might actually be working against Vivek. People might actually be believing he's the brown face of white supremacy, whatever is next for them to say. But, you know, there seems to be a shift in public opinion. And amazingly, people may be supporting figures like Nikki freaking Haley post-debate. And it's sad to me that the discourse in our country, it might be swayed more by smears and misrepresentation than genuine dialogue and factual, real representation. I hope that's not the case, man. You know, Haley would be bad for the blood, no doubt about that. But anyway, I thought you guys should see this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. And we'll see you in the next one.